My parents abandoned me at an airport when I was 16. 12 years later, they sued me for $11 million. At 16, I was dropped at an airport on Christmas Eve, in my pajamas, with a one-way ticket and a single suitcase. They didn't hug me. They didn't cry. They didn't even look back. They just drove away into the snow. And I stood there on that frozen curb, holding everything I owned, watching their taillights disappear. And I told myself, whatever happens next, you survive this? My name is Lila Voss. I'm 28, and I'm an architect living in Lyon, France. I rebuilt my life from nothing, learned a new language, put myself through university, built a career I'm proud of. I stopped crying about the past a long time ago. Then, 3 weeks ago, a phone call changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was reviewing blueprints when an unknown number appeared on my phone. A French area code I didn't recognize. Miss Voss. The voice was formal, measured. My name is Etienne Marchand. I'm an estate attorney in Provence. I'm calling regarding Colette Beaumont, your maternal grandmother. I almost dropped the phone. My adoptive parents had told me my grandmother died years ago, that I had no family in France. They lied. Madame Beaumont passed away 2 weeks ago at 89. She left specific instructions in her will. You are her sole beneficiary. He paused. The estate, a vineyard, a villa, investments totals approximately 23 million euros. Another pause. There is a complication. Someone is contesting the will. He cleared his throat. Your adoptive parents, Robert and Carol Weston. That night, I sat on my apartment floor staring at the wall, and the memories came flooding back. Christmas Eve. I was 16. There was no tree that year, no presents. My adoptive father called me downstairs after dinner. My adoptive mother was already wearing her coat, my suitcase, my entire life packed into one bag, sat by the front door. What's going on? I asked. Robert handed me an envelope. Inside was a plane ticket. One way, Paris. Your real family is in France, Carol said, still not looking at me. Your mother died there. You've never really been ours, Layla. We tried. It's time. I begged. Please, what did I do? I'll do better. I'll change. Robert just said, the car's running. Get your coat. They drove me to O'Hare in silence. Carol never turned around once. Not once. Robert walked me to the curb, handed me my suitcase, told me there was an address inside, a group home in Marseille, and then he got back in the car and drove away. I stood there in my pajamas, watching the car until I couldn't see it anymore. I was 16 years old. In an airport, in a country where I didn't speak the language, completely alone. The legal documents arrived the next morning. Robert and Carol Weston, plaintiffs versus the estate of Colette Beaumont. Their argument, they had raised me for 13 years. They were claiming 50% $11.5 million for abandoning me at an airport. My best friend Nina came over during her lunch break and found me on the floor surrounded by papers. They're not trying to win, she said after scanning the complaint. They're trying to pressure you into settling. They know you hate conflict. They're betting you'll pay them to go away. She was right, and Carol had already been on Facebook for days, posting tearful messages about the daughter we lost, family being torn apart by greed. 3,000 shares. Someone in the comments had written, I heard she inherited millions from some European relative, her poor parents. She'd been controlling the narrative before I even knew there was a story to tell. Then Carol called. Her voice was thick with perfectly timed tears. We're not suing you, sweetheart. We're just protecting what's fair for the family. What family? I said. You told me I was never part of yours. Robert got on the line. We sacrificed everything for you. Your grandmother didn't understand what we gave up. You abandoned me, I said. And now you want to profit from her death. I hung up. My hands were shaking. But something inside me felt solid for the first time in days. Etienne called that afternoon with something new. Robert Weston had worked in banking in the early 2000s, international wire transfers for high-net-worth clients, including the Beaumont family. He had known about my grandmother before they ever signed the adoption papers. I thought about 13 years of birthday cards signed, Love, Mom and Dad. 13 years of being told I was lucky they chose me. 13 years of a basement bedroom, while Zoe, the daughter they adopted 2 years after me, had a room upstairs with a bay window. Was any of it ever real? That evening, an email arrived. Subject line, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." From a retired social worker named Margaret Holt. In 2001, she had processed my adoption. Something felt wrong from the beginning. The Westons asked too many questions about your biological family, specifically about assets, properties, inheritance potential. I flagged my concerns. My supervisor told me to proceed anyway. I should have fought harder. Last month, cleaning out my home office, I found backup copies of my files, including an email Robert Weston accidentally CC'd to the agency while corresponding with his private attorney. It discussed the long-term financial potential of the child and establishing legal parenthood as a prerequisite to inheritance claims. The date on that email, December 15th, 2014, 9 days before they put you on a plane to France. I'm flying to Provence next week. I'll testify to whatever you need. 9 days. They had planned it 9 days before Christmas. All those years I'd wondered what I had done wrong, what I could have changed. And the answer was nothing. It was never about me. It was always about money. Hook 3, Mid-Story Reach Engagement. The mediation was held in a courtroom in Aix-en-Provence. High ceilings, tall windows, the French coat of arms on the wall behind the mediator's bench. Etienne laid out the evidence calmly. The email proving premeditation, the adoption records showing Robert had asked about my grandmother's finances, Margaret Holt's sworn testimony. Then Etienne withdrew a sealed envelope from his briefcase and set it on the table. This is a letter written by Colette Beaumont, to be read aloud at any legal proceeding concerning the estate. He broke the seal. The room went very quiet. He looked at me once, just for a moment. Then he began to read. My dearest Leela, by the time you hear this, I will be gone. But I want you to know the truth. All of it. I knew about you from the day you were born. Your mother, my daughter Elise, sent me photographs every week. When she died in the accident, I was devastated. I wanted to raise you myself. But I was 71, living in another country, and the authorities said a grandmother overseas was not a suitable guardian. When the Westons adopted you, I was hopeful. I wrote letters. I sent gifts. Every single one was returned unopened. They told me you wanted nothing to do with me. I believed them. Until I learned otherwise. In 2014, your adoptive parents contacted me directly. They demanded money. They said if I refused, they would send you back to the foster system. I refused. I believed they were bluffing. Etienne stopped reading. He took a slow breath. 9 days later, he continued, they put you on a plane to France. You were 16 years old. You had nothing. I watched you arrive at the group home in Marseille. I watched you learn French, find work, put yourself through school. I wanted so badly to reveal myself. But I thought if she can do all this alone, she doesn't need an old woman complicating her life. I was wrong. I should have come to you sooner. I hope this inheritance is some small compensation for the years I stayed silent. But more than money, I want you to know, you were never unwanted. You were loved from afar, imperfectly but completely. Always. The room was silent, not awkward silence, heavy silence, the kind that presses down on your chest. Then Robert slammed his hand on the table. This is hearsay. That woman was senile. She didn't know what she was writing. The mediator, Judge Claire Fontaine, silenced him with a single look. Mr. Bresterol, Weston, sit down. Then a quiet voice cut through everything. Zoe, their other adopted daughter, now 24, had stood up from her seat behind her parents. Her hands were clasped in front of her. She was shaking slightly, but her voice didn't waver. Years ago, I was maybe 12. I heard them fighting about money. Dad said. She swallowed. He said Layla was a losing bet. He said they should have cut their losses sooner. Carol went white. Zoe, sweetheart, you don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. Zoe looked at me. I'm sorry, Layla. I should have said something sooner. I was scared. Judge Fontaine folded her hands and looked at Robert and Carol for a long moment before she spoke. The claim brought by Robert and Carol Weston is rejected in its entirety. The evidence demonstrates the petitioners adopted Leela Voss with the explicit intention of accessing her biological family's wealth. When that plan failed, they abandoned a minor child in a foreign country. I am referring this case to the appropriate authorities for investigation into adoption fraud and child abandonment. She paused. Ms. Voss, you are the sole and rightful heir to Colette Beaumont's estate. A ghost of warmth crossed her face. Your grandmother would be proud of you. I walked out of that courtroom with Nina on one side and 12 years of silence finally broken behind me. Hook 4, Audience engagement. 3 months later, I moved into the villa. I still work at my architecture firm in Lyon. I still meet Nina for coffee on Saturday mornings. But now I have space, a garden, a view of the vineyard where my grandmother spent her final years watching over me from a distance. I used part of the inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for young people aging out of foster care. I named it after my mother, Elise Beaumont, the school teacher I never knew, but somehow always felt. Zoe sent a letter a few weeks later. She'd moved out of her parents' house. She was in therapy, trying to make sense of the family she'd grown up in. I know we're not really sisters, she wrote, but I'd like to be friends someday, if you're ever open to it. I thought about it for a long time. Then I wrote back, I'd like that too. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just forward. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, you don't owe anyone your loyalty just because they have a title. Mother, father, family, those words mean nothing without the actions to back them up. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's how you protect your peace. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from people who only ever saw you as an investment. If you've been through something similar, if you've ever had to choose yourself over people who were supposed to love you, drop a comment, tell me your story. And if this video meant something to you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it today. Thank you for staying until the end. Take care of yourself.